Good evening, everyone. Hopefully this focuses in. Welcome to another coding video slash review. This time we're gonna look at something I wrote 2 days ago, or 1 day ago, written in Python and Selenium. This was a pretty interesting project that I found on Upwork. The guy had some interesting specifications too. I don't think I fully implemented it just because this is the limit of my knowledge. However, let's just get into it. I have my preview of a README right here. Automate screenshots with Python. I built a Python script that would be able to theoretically process 10,000 URLs at one time using multi-threading and Selenium. This script would screenshot every single URL that was placed in the get screenshot function and would return everything in the images folder under the name or the name of the image being the URL that it comes from. All of the websites are in websites.py. You're more than welcome to add more. This is about 1,000. This is also as much as I could test, just given my own personal limitations. I have a really good setup, to be fair. I have gigabit internet. I have 64 gigs of RAM. I have an i7 13700KF CPU. So I have a really good rig. But I was literally killing the internet in my whole house when I was testing the script. So yeah, not going to test for 10,000. I was thinking of setting this up on a server and just having the server process it, but I don't really know how that works at the moment. Like I said, this is sort of the limit of my learning in around a day. So yeah, we have the websites.py. Oh, also, one of the things I want to mention. This is here because Selenium doesn't actually process websites if it's not prepended with an HTTP or HTTPS. Interesting, but I'm surprised to see that. I guess it makes sense because most modern browsers have a warning that show you that, you know, if it's not secured or HTTP or whatever, it's just going to give you a warning. And you'll see later on when I explain it that when a website doesn't exist, we're going to get some timeout exceptions. In main.py, we process all of those URLs in the websites.py file. We use multi-threading, thread pool executor from concurrent.futures. I'm not using threading. Like, I'm not using the threading library directly. I'm using thread pool executor because it's sort of like an automatic management of threads. They open them, they close them, they join them, whatever it is, they do it. And I don't have to worry about coding something like that. So, really useful. So with multi-threading in Selenium, websites are processed with 10 threads. One thread processes one URL and takes roughly 1 second to process. Note, only in the most ideal of circumstances, hardware limitations, long processing times, and timeout exceptions can cause delays within the program. If a timeout exception occurs, around 30 seconds will pass trying to get a response. And if it doesn't work, then the thread that's processing that URL will stop processing it and move on to the next thread. So to run the program, you must have, I forgot to put it on my MD, you must have Selenium, enough time, disk space, and RAM space, which I'm going to specify later. Timings. Based on the timings and specifications below, you can calculate how long it would take to run given the amount of URLs. I don't want to ruin that right now, but specs. We have our i7 13700KF. It used around 40% of my processor when I was running my program, and 2 gigabytes of RAM at least, at the very least, allocated only to run this program. Getting into the code, I have some logging here. That's just for me. It's also for, I guess, whoever runs this later on. We have our driver. We have all our imports. They're not that important right now. We create our driver. I had so many issues using Chrome. I have no idea why. Chrome was causing so many problems, so I just decided to switch to Firefox. We have a lot of these options that'll ideally optimize all of our Selenium processing. The most important two are headless, because this will prevent any browsers from actually opening up, going to the website, processing the screenshot, closing. None of that happens. It prevents any windows from opening. And incognito mode for, you know, any of the weirdos here. We have our driver here created. We have the load timeout. I think this is just to wait for the page to load before we take a screenshot. It's not 30 seconds. I think it might be 30 milliseconds. And we maximize the window. Then we close the driver. Before we get into the get screenshot, I want to actually show you the end result, sort of. If we run only one URL, yeah, this was just me testing with one of the Selenium document websites. I was getting some errors, and I just figured, okay, if I'm going to take a screenshot, might as well test it with one of the URLs. So my screen is 2,560 pixels wide. And instead of doing depth, I just decided to make it so that the whole screen was captured, which I think makes sense. Part of the Upwork requirements was that they wanted the whole screenshots. The other requirement also was that the image name has to be the URL path, or not URL path, the URL. Each driver is created per thread. I actually made the program before doing this final rendition, where it was only one driver and every thread was processing it through one driver. I don't fully remember what happened, but I remember it not being that efficient. Selenium is usually thread safe, but I made the flow of the program explicitly thread safe using the try, except, and finally structure. So we create our driver here. We get a URL per thread. Again, this is per thread. I want to make that very clear. We specify our dimensions, set the window size. We do our renaming of the file because when you're naming documents in Windows, you can't have certain characters. So all of those banned characters are replaced with an underscore. Save it to the path. Sleep for 0.1. I think that's in milliseconds because I don't want to rapid fire function calls. Reason being, I was getting, before I explicitly did the thread safety stuff, I was getting a lot of issues where the code was running, but nothing was happening. I didn't really understand why. I think it was due to a thread, like deadlock, resource issue, contention thing. In the case that we get a timeout exception, and the only time we get timeout exceptions is if the URL doesn't exist. We'll wait for 30 seconds, and if it doesn't work, then we'll just quit. If it does work, we'll also quit the driver. So the driver's always resets. We have around 10 threads. I could change it if I want to. Technically, I think I could handle 16 threads on the CPU, but I'm not going to do that because I don't want to kill my computer. So we use the thread pool executor to create all of our threads and to manage all of our threads. We have the hard limit of 10,000 URLs. We use the submit function from the executor for every URL. Else, if it's more than that, then too many URLs, amount of URLs, and then it should fail. We have the timing here because I wanted to see how long it would take to actually process all of these URLs. So here are based off my specs, and assuming my equations are correct for the theoretical run here, it should be correct. But again, you can do your own testing and you can play around with the numbers and timeout numbers and stuff like that. Run 1. We ran 100 URLs with a for loop. I never actually tested this with 1,000 because I think it would actually take way too long. Right here, I was doing that. It ran for approximately 7 minutes with just a for loop and calling that function. Run number 2, 100 URLs, but 5 threads. With 5 threads, it ran for almost exactly 5 minutes, 299 seconds. Run number 3 ran 100 URLs with 10 threads, and this was obviously expected. It was almost half of run 2's runtime, 2 minutes 39 seconds, which is exactly what I expected. The only reason it's not exactly is, again, due to the limitations of the hardware limitations, long processing times, timeout exceptions, etc. And when I ran 1,000 URLs, and this is where my actual testing stopped, which was at 1,000 URLs, the program completed in roughly 38 minutes, which was more than 2,000 seconds. The runtimes above differ a lot due to all that stuff. Run 5, this is a theoretical, because I cannot test this, given my surroundings and personal limitations. Running 10,000 URLs with 10 threads. So given the amount of screenshots saved in my personal run with 1,000 URLs, so basically given this test right here, only 76.4% of websites were screenshotted due to timeout exceptions from the other websites. Assuming the equations are conceptually correct, and I have to explain some of this here. We have our error time. So we have 30 seconds for the timeout to occur. We have 10,000 links times the error rate, which is just 100% minus the success rate, 73,800 seconds. Success time, 1 second per thread, plus 2 seconds after all threads are completed, divided by 10, because the program hangs a little bit when all 10 threads are done processing, and then 10 new threads take on 10 new URLs, times 10,000 links times the success rate, which gives us 9,168 seconds. So the error time plus the success time gives us 82,968 seconds, which is almost a whole day. I don't know if I did those calculations right. I'm assuming I did. It seems correct. I can't really say because I'm not the best at this stuff. Limitations and constraints. I already explained all of that. And we get some errors, which is just the website does not exist. Website exists, but contains either 400 or 500 errors. It will actually take a screenshot of this because the website's still sending you back something. It'll take the screenshot of the error. There could also be the potential of the browser itself causing issues and the tags up here causing issues, or the options. I never tested that myself, so. And then a blank or almost empty screenshot is saved. Only one I've really seen this with is YouTube. It'll produce a blank screen without any videos. And this was only when I was in incognito mode. So it probably was due to the fact that I was in incognito mode. Tested this on my phone. I just went on incognito mode. Obviously, it's not going to have any recommendeds for you. They just say, oh, type something in. And then it'll serve you based off of that. Yeah, so that's the program. I don't want to execute it right now. I could. You know what? Let's actually do that. I'm not going to go too crazy with it. We're just going to process 10 URLs here. We're going to process the URLs to the first 10 websites. So let's actually run it. And this shouldn't take too long. There we go. All the screenshots are saved. This is from the logging API because I wanted to make sure all of my threads were working from 0 to 9. It's not in order because that's not really how threads work. Took 16 seconds. And we have all of the websites here. Whoa. We got Ajax Google APIs, Google Fonts, which 404 error. Whatever this was supposed to be, Google Tag Manager.com, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn. Pretty interesting project. It actually really didn't take that much time. I spent 1 or 2 hours at the most on the first day when I was coding it just to get the screenshot working. And then I spent the next day working out all the bugs, learning multi-threading, learning thread pool executor, learning more about Selenium and optimizing the processing of all that stuff. I hope you learned something. I thought it was a really interesting project. The reason why I'm coding these things, and the reason why I think you should too, is just to further your understanding of whatever language, or even just get some confidence with real world projects. I highly recommend. This picture was in one of the Discords that I'm in, one of the programming ones. It's either Reactiflux, which I don't think it is, or it's the Coding Den, which I think it actually is. They had this here, Programming Challenges, version 4.0. They have all of the categories, the difficulties. Very interesting. I highly recommend you use this to learn how to understand the problem, how to implement it, how to test it, you know, how to look up how to get through a problem, debugging. And there's so much more. Like it's really just, they're really just good programs that you could make to practice and understand how to build software. Highly recommended. So without further ado, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like it if you like it, dislike it if you dislike it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.